Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. First part, the son of the Brahman. To Roman Roland, my dear friend. In the shade of the house, and the sunshine of the river bank near the boats, in the shade of the salwood forest, in the shade of the fig tree is where Siddhartha grew up, the handsome son of the Brahman, the young falcon together with his friend Govinda, son of a Brahman. The sun tanned his light shoulders by the banks of the river when bathing, performing the sacred ablutions, the sacred offerings. In the mango grove, shade poured into his black eyes when playing as a boy, when his mother sang, when the wise men talked. For a long time, Siddhartha had been partaking in the discussions of the wise men, practicing with Govinda the art of reflection, the service of meditation. He already knew how to speak the Om silently, the word of words, to speak it silently into himself when inhaling, to speak it silently out of himself while exhaling. With all the concentration of his soul, the forehead surrounded by the glow of the clear thinking spirit, he already knew how to feel Atman in the depths of his being, indestructible, one with the universe. Joy leapt into his father's heart for his son, who was quick to learn, thirsty for knowledge. He saw him growing up to be a great, wise man, and a priest, a prince among the Brahmins. Bliss leapt into his mother's breast when she saw him walking, when she saw him sit down and get up. Siddhartha, strong, handsome, he was who was walking on slender legs, greeting her with perfect respect. Love touched the hearts of the Brahmin's young daughters when Siddhartha walked through the lanes of the town with a luminous forehead, with the eye of a king with his slim hips. But more than all the others, he was loved by Govinda, his friend, the son of a Brahmin. He loved Siddhartha's eyes and sweet voice. He loved his walk and the perfect decency of his movements. He loved everything Siddhartha did and said, and what he loved most was his spirit, his transcendent, fiery thoughts, his ardent will, his high calling. Govinda knew he would not become a common Brahmin, not a lazy official in charge of offerings, not a greedy merchant with magic spells, not a vain, vacuous speaker, not a mean, deceitful priest, and also not a decent, stupid sheep in the herd of the many. No, and he, Govinda, was as well, did not want to become one of those, not one of those tens of thousands of Brahmins. He wanted to follow Siddhartha, the beloved, the splendid, and in the days to come, when Siddhartha would become a god, when he would join the glorious, then Govinda would wanted to follow him as his friend, his companion, his servant, his spear carrier, his shadow. Siddhartha was thus loved by everyone. He was a source of joy for everybody. He was a delight for them all. But he, Siddhartha, was not a source of joy for himself. He found no delight in himself. Walking the rosy paths of the fig tree garden, sitting in the bluish shade of the grove of contemplation, washing his limbs daily in the bath of repentance, sacrificing in the dim shade of the mango forest, his gestures of perfect decency, everyone's love and joy, he still lacked all joy in his heart. Dreams and restless thoughts came into his mind, flowing from the water of the river, sparkling from the stars of the night, melting from the beams of the sun. Dreams came to him in a restlessness of the soul, fuming from the sacrifices, breathing forth from the verses of the Rig infused into him drop by drop from the teachings of the old Brahmins. Siddhartha had started to nurse discontent in himself. He had started to feel that the love of his father and the love of his mother and also the love of his friend Govinda would not bring him joy forever and ever, would not nurse him, feed him, satisfy him. He had started to suspect that his venerable father and his other teachers, that the wise Brahmins had already revealed to him the most and best of their wisdom, that they had already fulfilled his expecting vessel with their richness, and the vessel was not full, and the spirit was not content, the soul was not calm, the heart was not satisfied. The ablutions were good, but they were water. They did not wash off the sin. They did not heal the spirit's thirst. They did not relieve the fear in his heart. The sacrifices and the invocation of the gods were excellent, but was that all? Did the sacrifices give a happy fortune? And what about the gods? Was it really Prajapati who had created the world? Was it not the Atman, he, the only one, the singular one? Were the gods not creations created like me and you, subject to time, mortal? Was it therefore good? Was it right? Was it meaningful and the highest occupation to make offerings to the gods? For whom else were offerings to be made? Who else was to be worshipped but him, the only one, the Atman? And where was Atman to be found? Where did he reside? Where did his eternal heart beat? Where else but in one's own self, in the innermost part, in its indestructible part, which everyone had in himself? But where was this self, this innermost part, this ultimate part? It was not flesh and bone, it was neither thought nor consciousness, thus the wisest ones taught. So where was it? To reach this place, the self, myself, the Atman, there was another way, which was worthwhile looking for. Alas, and nobody showed this way, nobody knew it, not the Father, and not the teachers and wise men, not the holy sacrificial songs. They knew everything, the Brahmins and their holy books. They knew everything, they had taken care of everything, and more than anything, the creation of the world, the origin of speech, of food, of inhaling, of exhaling, the arrangement of the senses, the acts of the gods. They knew infinitely much, but was it valuable to know all of this, not knowing that one and only thing, the most important thing, the solely important thing? Surely many verses of the holy books, particularly in the Upanishads of the Samaveda, spoke of this innermost and ultimate thing. Wonderful verses, your soul is the whole world, was written there, and it was written that man in his sleep, in his deep sleep, would meet with his innermost part and reside in the Atman. Marvelous wisdom was there in these verses. All knowledge of the wisest ones had been collected here in magic words, pure as honey collected by bees. No, not to be looked down upon was the tremendous amount of enlightenment which lay here collected and preserved by innumerable generations of wise Brahmins. But where were the Brahmins? Where the priests? Where the wisest men or the penitents who had succeeded in not just knowing this deepest of all knowledge, but also to live it? Where was the knowledgeable one who wove his spell to bring his familiarity with the Atman out of the sleep into the state of being awake, into the life, into every step of the way, into word and deed? Siddhartha knew many venerable Brahmins, chiefly his father, the pure one, the scholar, the most venerable one. His father was to be admired, quiet and noble were his manners, pure his life, wise his words, delicate and noble thoughts lived behind its brow. But even he who knew so much did Did he live in blissfulness? Did he have peace? Was he not also just a searching man, a thirsty man? Did he not again and again have to drink from holy sources as a thirsty man, from the offerings, from the books, from the disputes of the Brahmins? Why did he, the irreproachable one, have to wash off sins every day, strive for cleansing every day, over and over every day? Was it not Atman in him? Did not this pristine source spring from his heart? It had to be found, the pristine source in one's own self. It had to be possessed. Everything else was searching, was a detour, was getting lost. Thus were Siddhartha's thoughts. This was his thirst. This was his suffering. Often he spoke to himself from a Chatokya Upanishad the words, "Truly the name of the Brahman is Satyam. Verily, he who knows such a thing will enter the heavenly world every day." Often it seemed near the heavenly world, but he never reached it completely. Never he had quenched the ultimate thirst. And among all the wise and wisest men he knew and whose instructions he had received, among all of them there was no one who had reached it completely, the heavenly world, who had quenched it completely, the eternal thirst. Govinda, Siddhartha spoke to his friend. Govinda, my dear, come with me under the banyan tree. Let's practice meditation. They went to the banyan tree. They sat down, Siddhartha right there, Govinda 20 paces away. While putting himself down, ready to speak the Om, Siddhartha repeated, murmuring the verse. Om is the bow, the arrow is the soul, the Brahman is the arrow's target that one should incessantly hit. After the usual time of the exercise and meditation had passed, Govinda rose. The evening had come. It was time to perform the evening's ablution. He called Siddhartha's name. Siddhartha did not answer. Siddhartha sat there lost in thought. His eyes were rigidly focused upon towards a very distant target. The tip of his tongue was protruding a little beneath the teeth. He seemed not to breathe. Thus he, wrapped in contemplation, thinking Om, his soul sent after the Brahman as an arrow. Once Samanas had traveled through Siddhartha's town, ascetics on a pilgrimage. 3 skinny, withered men, neither old nor young, with dusty and bloody shoulders, almost naked, scorched by the sun, surrounded by loneliness, strangers and enemies to the world, strangers and lank jackals in the realm of humans. Behind them blew a hot scent of quiet passion, the destructive service of merciless self-denial. In the evening, after the hour of contemplation, Siddhartha spoke to Govinda. Early morning, my friend. Siddhartha will go to the Samanas. He will become a Samana. Govinda turned pale when he heard these words and read the decision and the motionless face of his friend, unstoppable like the arrow shot from the bow. Soon, and with the first glance, Govinda realized, now it is beginning. Now Siddhartha is taking his own way. Now his fate is beginning to sprout, and with his, my own, he turned pale like a dry banana skin. "Oh, Siddhartha," he exclaimed, "will your father permit you to do that?" Siddhartha looked over as if he was just awaking up. Arrow fast, he read in Govinda's soul, read the fear, read the submission. "Oh, Govinda," he spoke quietly, "let's not waste words. Tomorrow at daybreak, I will begin the life of the Samanas. Speak no more of it." Siddhartha entered the chamber where his father was sitting on a mat of bast, and stepped behind his father, and remained standing there until his father felt that someone was standing behind him. Quoth the Brahman, "Is that you, Siddhartha? Then say what you came to say." Quoth Siddhartha, with your permission, my father, I came to tell you that it is my longing to leave your house tomorrow and go to the aesthetics. My desire is to become a samana. May my father not oppose this. The Brahman fell silent and remained silent for so long that the stars in the small window wandered and changed their relative positions ere the silence was broken. Silent and motionless stood the sun with his arms folded. Silent and motionless sat the father on the mat, and the stars traced their paths in the sky. Then spoke the father, not proper it is for a Brahmin to speak harsh and angry words, but indignation is in my heart. I wish not to hear this request for a second time from your mouth. Slowly the Brahmin rose. Siddhartha stood silently, his arms folded. What are you waiting for? Asked the father. Quoth Siddhartha, you know what. Indignant, the father left the chamber. Indignant, he went to his bed and lay down. After an hour, since no sleep had come over his eyes, the Brahmin stood up, paced to and fro, and left the house. Through the small window of the chamber he looked back inside, and there he saw Siddhartha standing, his arms folded, not moving from his spot. Pale shimmered his bright robe. With anxiety in his heart, the father returned to his bed. After another hour, since no sleep had come over his eyes, the Brahmin stood up again, paced to and fro, walked out of the house, and saw that the moon had risen. Through the window of the chamber he looked back inside. There stood Siddhartha, not moving from his spot, his arms folded, moonlight reflecting from his bare shins. With worry in his heart, the father went back to bed. And he came back after an hour. He came back after 2 hours, looked through the small window, saw Siddhartha standing in the moonlight by the light of the stars in the darkness. And he came back hour after hour. Silently he looked into the chamber, saw him standing in the same place, filled his heart with anger, filled his heart with unrest, filled his heart with anguish, filled it with sadness. And in the night's last hour, before the day began, he returned, stepped into the room, saw the young man standing there who seemed tall and like a stranger to him. Siddhartha, he spoke, what are you waiting for? You know what. Will you always stand that way and wait until it becomes morning, noon, and evening? I will stand and wait. You will become tired, Siddhartha. I will become tired. You will fall asleep, Siddhartha. I will not fall asleep. You will die, Siddhartha. I will not die. And would you rather die than obey your father? Siddhartha has always obeyed his father. So will you abandon your plan? Siddhartha will do what his father will tell him to do. The first light of day shone into the room. The Brahmin saw that Siddhartha was trembling softly in his knees. In Siddhartha's face he saw no trembling. His eyes were fixed on a distant spot. Then his father realized that even now Siddhartha no longer dealt with him in his home, that he had already left him. The father touched Siddhartha's shoulder. You will, he spoke, go into the forest and become a samana. When you'll have found blissfulness in the forest, then come back and teach me to be blissful. If you'll find disappointment, then return and let us once again make offerings to the gods together. Go now and kiss your mother. Tell her where you are going. But for me it is time to go to the river and to perform the first ablution. He took his hand from the shoulder of his son and went outside. Siddhartha wavered to the side and tried to walk. He put his limbs back under control, bowed to his father, and went to his mother to do as his father had said. As he slowly lifted on his stiff legs in the first light of day, the still quiet town, a shadow rose near the last hut, who had crouched there and joined the pilgrim. Govinda, you have come, said Siddhartha, and smiled. I have come, said Siddhartha Govinda, with the Samanas. In the evening of this day, they caught up with the ascetics, the skinny Samanas, and offered them their companionship and obedience. They were accepted. Siddhartha gave his garments to a poor Brahmin in the street. He wore nothing more than the lion cloth and the earth-colored, unsewn cloak. He ate only once a day and never something cooked. He fasted for 15 days. He fasted for 28 days. The flesh waned from his thighs and cheeks. Feverish dreams flickered from his enlarged eyes. Long nails grew slowly on his parched fingers, and a dry, shaggy beard grew on his chin. His glance turned to icy when he encountered women. His mouth twitched with contempt when he walked through a city of nicely dressed people. He saw merchants trading, princes hunting, mourners wailing for the dead, whores offering themselves, physicians trying to help the sick, priests determining the most suitable day for seeding, lovers loving, mothers nursing their children, and all of this was not worthy of one look from his eye. It all lied, it all stank of lies. It all pretended to be meaningful and joyful and beautiful, and it all was just concealed putrefaction. The world tasted bitter. Life was torture. A goal stood before Siddhartha, a single goal, to become empty, empty of thirst, empty of wishing, empty of dreams, empty of joy and sorrow, dead to himself, not to be a self any more, to find tranquility with an empty herd, to be open to miracles and unselfish thoughts. That was his goal. Once all of myself was overcome and had died, once every desire and every urge was silent in the heart, then the ultimate part of me had to awake, the innermost part of my being, which is no longer myself, the great secret. Silently, Siddhartha exposed himself to burning rays of the sun directly above, glowing with pain, glowing with thirst, and stood there until he neither felt any pain nor thirst any more. Silently he stood there in the rainy season. From his hair the water was dripping over freezing shoulders, over freezing hips and legs, and the penitent stood there until he could not feel the cold in his shoulders and legs any more, until there was silent, until they were quiet. Silently he cowered in the thorny bushes. Blood dripped from the burning skin, from festering wounds dripped pus, and Siddhartha stayed rigidly, stayed motionless, until no blood flowed any more, until nothing stung any more, until nothing burned any more. Siddhartha sat upright and learned to breathe sparingly, learned to get along with only a few breaths, learned to stop breathing. He learned, beginning with the breath, to calm the beat of his heart, leaned to reduce the beats of his heart until they were only few and almost numb. Instructed by the oldest of the Samanas, Siddhartha practiced self-denial, practiced meditation according to a new Samana rules. A heron flew over the bamboo forest, and Siddhartha accepted the heron into his soul, flew over the forest and mountains, was a heron, ate fish, felt the pangs of a heron's hunger, spoke the heron's croak, died a heron's death. A dead jackal was lying on the sandy bank, and Siddhartha's soul slipped inside the body, was the dead jackals lay on the banks, got bloated, stank, decayed, was dismembered by hyenas, was skinned by vultures, turned into a skeleton, turned to dust, was blown across the fields, and Siddhartha's soul returned, had died, had decayed, was scattered as dust, had tasted the gloomy intoxication of the cycle, awaited a new thirst like a hunter in the gap, where he could escape from the cycle, where the end of the causes, where an eternity without suffering began. He killed his senses, he killed his memory, he slipped out of his self into thousands of other forms, was an animal, was a carrion, was stone, was wood, was water, was awoke every time to find his old self again, sun shone or moon, was his self again, turned round in the cycle, felt thirst, overcame thirst, felt new thirst. Siddhartha learned a lot when he was with the Samanas. Many ways leading away from the self he learned to go. He went the way of self-denial by means of pain, through voluntarily suffering and overcoming pain, hunger, thirst, tiredness. He went the way of self-denial by means of meditation, through imagining the mind to be void of all conceptions. These and other ways he learned to go. 1,000 times he left his self. For hours and days he remained in the non-self. But though the ways led away from the self, their end nevertheless always led back to the self. Though Siddhartha fled from the self 1,000 times, stayed in nothingness, stayed in the animals, in the stone, the return was inevitable. An escape was the hour when he found himself back in the sunshine, or in the moonlight, in the shade, or in the rain, and was once again his self and Siddhartha, and again felt the agony of the cycle which had been forced upon him. By his side lived Govinda, his shadow, walked the same paths, undertook the same efforts. They rarely spoke to one another than the service and the exercises required. Occasionally, the two of them went through the villages to beg for food for themselves and their teachers. How do you think, Govinda, Siddhartha spoke one day while begging this way, how do you think, did we progress? Did we reach any goals? Govinda answered, we have learned and will continue learning. You'll be a great Samana, Siddhartha. Quickly, you've learned every exercise. Often the old Samanas have admired you. One day you'll be a holy man, O Siddhartha. Quoth Siddhartha, I can't help but feel that it is not like this, my friend. What I've learned being among the Samanas up to this day, this, O Govinda, I could have learned more quickly and by simpler means. In every tavern of that part of a town where the whorehouses are, my friend, among carters and gamblers, I could have learned it. Quoth Govinda, Siddhartha is putting me on. How could you have learned meditation, holding your breath, and sensitivity against hunger and pain there among these wretched people? And Siddhartha said quietly, as if he was talking to himself, what is meditation? What is leaving one's body? What is fasting? What is holding one's breath? It is fleeing from the self. It is a short escape of the agony of being a self. It is a short numbing of the senses against the pain and the pointlessness of life. The same escape, the same short numbing is what the driver of the ox cart finds in the inn, drinking a few bowls of rice wine or fermented coconut milk. Then he won't feel himself any more. Then he won't feel the pains of a life any more. Then he finds a short numbing of the senses. When he falls asleep over this bowl of rice wine, he'll find the same what Siddhartha and Govinda find when they escape their bodies through long exercises, staying in the non-self. This is how it is, O Govinda. Quoth Govinda, you say so, O friend, And yet you know that Siddhartha is no driver of an ox cart, and a Samana is no drunkard. It's true that a drinker numbs his senses. It's true that he briefly escapes and rests, but he'll return from the delusion, finds everything to be unchanged, has not become wiser, has gathered no enlightenment, has not risen several steps. And Siddhartha spoke with a smile. I do not know. I've never been a drunkard, but that I, Siddhartha, find only a short numbing of the senses in my exercises and meditations, and that I am just as far removed from wisdom, from salvation, as a child in the mother's womb. This I know, O Govinda, this I know. And once again, another time, when Siddhartha left the forest together with Govinda to beg for some food in the village for their brothers and teachers, Siddhartha began to speak and said, What now, O Govinda? Might we be on the right path? Might we get closer to enlightenment? Might we get closer to salvation? Or do we perhaps live in a circle, we who have thought we were escaping the cycle? Quoth Govinda, We have learned a lot, Siddhartha. There is still much to learn. We are not going around in circles, we are moving up. The circle is a spiral. We have already ascended many a level. Siddhartha answered, How old, would you think, is our oldest Samana, our venerable teacher? Quoth Govinda, Our oldest one might be about 60 years of age. And Siddhartha, He has lived for 60 years and has not reached the nirvana. He'll turn 70 and 80, and you and me, we will grow just as old, and will do our exercises, and will fast, and will meditate, but we will not reach the nirvana. He won't, and we won't. O Govinda, I believe out of all the samanas out there, perhaps not a single one will reach the nirvana. We find comfort, we find numbness, we learn feats to deceive others, but the most important thing, the path of paths, we will not find. If only, spoke Govinda, wouldn't speak such terrible words, Siddhartha. How could it be that among so many learned men, among so many Brahmins, among so many austere and venerable Samanas, among so many who are searching, so many who are eagerly trying, so many holy men, no one will find the path of paths? But Siddhartha said in a voice which contained just as much sadness as mockery, with a quiet, a slightly sad, a slightly mocking voice, Soon, Govinda, your friend will leave the path of the Samanas. He has walked along your side for so long. I'm suffering of thirst, O Govinda, and on this path of a Samana, my thirst has remained as strong as ever. I have always thirsted for knowledge. I have always been full of questions. I have asked the Brahmins year after year, and I have asked the holy Vedas year after year, and I have asked the devotee Samanas year after year. Perhaps, O Govinda, it had been just as well, had been just as smart and just as profitable if I had asked the hornbill bird or the chimpanzee. It took me a long time, and I am not finished learning this yet. O Govinda, that there is nothing to be learned. There is indeed no such thing, so I believe as what we refer to this as learning. There is, O my friend, just one knowledge, this and everywhere. This is Atman. This is within me and within you and within every creature. And so I'm starting to believe that this knowledge has no worser enemy than the desire to know it, than learning. At this, Govinda stopped on the path, rose his hands, and spoke. If you, Siddhartha, only would not bother your friend with this kind of talk, truly your words stir up fear in my heart. And just consider what would become of the sanctity of prayer, what of the venerability of the Brahman's caste, what of the holiness of the Samanas, if it was as you say, if there was no learning. What, O Siddhartha, what would then become of all this, what is that is holy, what is precious, what is venerable on earth? And Govinda mumbled a verse to himself. A verse from an Upanishad. He who is ponderingly of a purified spirit loses himself in the meditation of Atman, unexpressible by words, is his blissfulness of his heart. But Siddhartha remained silent. He thought about the words which Govinda had said to him, about the words due to their end. Yes, he thought, standing there with his head low, what would remain of all that which seemed to us to be holy? What remains? What can stand the test? And he shook his head. At one time, when the two young men had lived among the Samanas for about 3 years, and had shared their exercises, some news, a rumor, a myth reached them after being retold many times. A man had appeared, Gautama, by name, the exalted man, one, the Buddha. He had overcome the suffering of the world and himself, and had halted the cycle of rebirths. He was said to wander through the land, teaching, surrounded by disciples, without possession, without home, without a wife, in the yellow cloak of an ascetic, but with a cheerful brow, a man of bliss. And Brahmins, the princes, would bow down before him and would become his students. This myth, this rumor, this legend resounded. Its fragrance rose up here and there in the towns. The Brahmins spoke of it, and in the forest, and the Samanas again and again. The name of Gautama, the Buddha, reached the ears of the young man, with good and with bad talk, with praise and with defamation. It was as if the plague had broken out in a country, and news had been spreading around that in one or another place there was a man, a wise man, a knowledgeable one, whose word and breath was enough to heal everyone who had been infected with the pestilence. And as such news would go through the land, and everyone would talk about it, many would believe, many would doubt, but many would get on their way as soon as possible to seek the wise man, the helper. Just like this, the myth ran through the land, that fragrant myth of Gautama, the Buddha, the wise man of the family of Sakya. He possessed, so the believers said, the highest enlightenment. He remembered his previous lives. He had reached the nirvana and never returned into the cycle, was never again submerged in the murky river of physical forms. Many wonderful and unbelievable things were reported of him. He had performed miracles, had overcome the devil, had spoken to the gods. But his enemies and disbelievers said this Gautama was a vain seducer. He would spend his days in luxury, scorned the offerings, was without learning, and neither knew exercises nor self-castigation. The myth of Buddha sounded sweet. The scent of magic flowed from these reports. After all, the world was sick. Life was hard to bear. And behold, here a source seemed to spring forth. Here a messenger seemed to call out, comforting, mild, full of noble promises. Everywhere where the rumor of the Buddha was heard, everywhere in the lands of India, the young men listened up, felt a longing, felt hope, and among the Brahmin sons of the towns and villages, every pilgrim and stranger was welcome. When he brought news of him, the exalted one, the Shakyamuni, the myth had also reached the Samanas in the forest, and also Siddhartha, and also Govinda, slowly, drop by drop, every drop laden with hope, every drop laden with doubt. They rarely talked about it because the oldest one of the Samanas did not like this myth. He had heard that this alleged Buddha used to be an ascetic before and had lived in the forest, but had turned his back to luxury and worldly pleasures, and he had no high opinion of this Gautama. O Siddhartha, Govinda spoke to his friend one day. Today I was in the village, and a Brahmin invited me into his house. And in his house there was the son of a Brahmin from Magadha, who had seen the Buddha with his own eyes and has heard him teach. Verily, this made my chest ache when I breathed, and thought to myself, if only I would too, if only we both would too, Siddhartha and me, live to see the hour when we would hear the teachings from the mouth of this perfected man. Speak, friend, wouldn't we want to go there too and listen from the teachings from the Buddha's mouth? Quoth Siddhartha, always, O Govinda. I had thought Govinda would stay with the Samanas. Always I had believed his goal was to live to be 60 and 70 of age, and to keep on practicing those feats and exercises which are becoming a Samana. But behold, I had not known Govinda well enough. I knew little of his heart. So now you, my faithful friend, want to take a new path and go there where the Buddha spreads his teachings. Quoth Govinda, you're mocking me. Mock me if you like, Siddhartha, but have you not also developed a desire and eagerness to hear these teachings? And have you not at one time said to me you would not walk the path of the Samanas much longer? At this point, Siddhartha laughed in his very own manner, in which his voice assumed a touch of sadness and a touch of mockery, and said, well, Govinda, you've spoken well. You've remembered correctly. If only you remembered the other thing as well you've heard from me, which is that I have grown distrustful and tired against teachings and learning, and that my faith in words, which are brought to us by teachers, is small. But let's do it, my dear. I'm willing to listen to these teachings, though in my heart I believe that we've already tasted the best fruit of these teachings. Quoth Govinda, your willingness delights my heart, but tell me, how should this be possible? How should the Gautama's teachings, even before we have heard them, have revealed their best fruit to us? Quoth Siddhartha, let us eat this fruit and wait for the rest, O Govinda. But this fruit, which we already now received thanks to the Gautama, consisted in him calling us away from the Samanas. Whether he has also other and better things to give us, O friend, let us await with calm hearts. On this very day, Siddhartha informed the oldest of the Samanas of his decision that he wanted to leave him. He informed the oldest one with all the courtesy and modesty becoming to a younger one and a student. But the Samana became angry because the two young men wanted to leave him, and talked loudly and used crude swear words. Govinda was startled and became embarrassed. But Siddhartha put his mouth close to Govinda's ear and whispered to him, now I want to show the old man that I've learned something from him. Positioning himself closely in front of the Samana with a concentrated soul, he captured the old man's glance with his glances, deprived him of his own power, made him mute, took away his free will, subdued him under his own will, commanded him to do silently whatever he demanded him to do. The old man became mute, his eyes became motionless, his will was paralyzed, his arm was hanging down without power. He had fallen victim to Siddhartha's spell. But Siddhartha's thoughts brought the Samana under their control. He had to carry out what they commanded, and thus the old man made several bows, performed gestures of blessing, spoke stammeringly a godly wish for a good journey, and the young man returned the bows with thanks, returned the wish, went on their way with salutations. On the way, Govinda said, O Siddhartha, you have learned more from the Samanas than I knew. It is very hard to cast a spell on an old Samana. Truly, if you had stayed there, you would have learned to walk on water. I do not seek to walk on water, said Siddhartha. Let old Samanas be content with such feats.